Hello there, and welcome to Recon Paint Gaming Presents a brief history in the game of Xwing. Today we're going to cover a brief history of Xwing the miniatures game, created in 2012 by Fantasy Flight Games, or FFG, a child company of Asmodee. They were given a license to produce content using the IP or intellectual property by Disney and LucasArts. Fantasy Flight Games, or FFG, created a classic dogfighting game using Star Wars ships, characters, and creative game mechanics. With its unmeasured success, Xwing was able to launch in not only local gaming stores, but in larger chains such as Target and even Barnes & Noble. The developers were able to adjust the game to keep it competitive and exciting with the release of new rules and even new ships. Players were seeing new ships every few months, tournaments were a regular thing, and even people who didn't play were buying the ships just to display as pieces on either their shelves or even in their workplace. However, with issues that come with every game, there were, of course, struggles. Certain ships or upgrades were required, a meta began to overwhelm the standard game, and power creep was very too real. So, after several attempts to fix the game, FFG decided a new edition was required. After much thought, they decided to release Xwing 2.0 on May 1st, 2018. With points removed from the cards, they could adjust points in real time. New abilities on ships were created, new action bars, pilot abilities, and even mechanics. Players were hopeful that this time around things would improve. However, with power creep still nipping at FFG's heels, pressures to release new content, prize support, points adjustments, and so on, the game once again struggled. This also came with the hiccup due to FFG's repackaging the game and changing components. This required players to purchase conversion kits to allow us to keep using the ships we already owned. The hiccup was with new players not understanding which box to buy, as you can see from the packaging over here, and why they needed conversion kits. With each ship being re-released in new packaging, players patiently waited for their favorite ship to become available in standard play. They would be waiting forever, it seems, because reprints were halted rather quickly. You see, players that already owned the game since 1.0 didn't need any of the reprints, as they already owned all of the ships. And new players, as well as store owners, weren't sure or didn't understand which products to place on the shelves and which were for the current game. New players were dwindling, and old players felt certain or cheated out of their own stock. It was a downward slope from here. With attendance and sales down for Xwing, as well as other miniatures games owned by FFG, another change was made. The parent company, Asmodee, felt the other child company, AMG or Atomic Mass Games, would be better suited to handle all miniatures games. So, with all Star Wars IP moved to AMG when it came to miniatures, it was their turn to steer the ship this time around. So, in 2020, AMG proceeded to run Xwing, but no one would expect a global pandemic to be added to the mix. Obviously, I'm speaking about COVID. With shipping lanes down and limited lines of production, in-person events no longer open or completely shut down, no one was allowed to use the ships that they loved. X-Wing began to fall further than ever. As X-Wing is a game in which your ships come pre-assembled and pre-painted, homebodies didn't need to purchase physical ships at that time. And with no place to even enjoy the stuff that you had unless it was in your own private home, people delayed their purchases till COVID went away. With these decline in sales, we still did see new product hitting the store. Even with those new re-release products or new ships being released, stores began dumping the X-Wing merchandise on 50% shelves, returning them to the distributor, and making room for other games that actually sold. This is when AMG made a decision to modify the game a second time. AMG took a long look at the issues that plagued X-Wing and made it their own. After adding objectives and new rules yet again, people had new hopes for the game, COVID was starting to subside, and players returned to the game. However, AMG then threw a wrench in their own design by changing the list building mechanics. You see, FFG did have a way to make lists after updating to the second edition, but it was very clunky, not always up to date, and poorly designed. The community has their own list building, but you can't just throw someone else's product in your box. So players struggled with list building, they didn't like the objectives, and new products were drying up. It was easy to see the writing on the wall. And for that, we're going to move to another location to where I can speak more candidly. All right, thank you for letting me add a little humor into today's video, and we're going to keep discussing the different changes. But as we know, the changes at AMG did not perform well. There was a lot of fallout from COVID that couldn't have been predicted. The cost of producing ships was now well above the previous COVID price. Pre-assembled, pre-painted ships were now really not cost effective to produce. And when retailers were already selling them for about $25 to keep making ships like that, I can only guess what they'd have to raise the prices to. Mine guess would be probably around $35 to $45 per small base ship. So the options to create new ships without paint jobs or unassembled ships was an option, but AMG then has to decide if a game in such decline was worth another dramatic change like that. So also on top of that, you need Disney's approval, and that's another side of things that people didn't expect. So Disney or LucasArts has final say on whatever gets created or which ships have a model to represent it. For several interviews, we can see AMG hint to the fact that Disney wasn't allowing AMG to produce new ships. AMG did submit multiple ships for development, but were turned down for unknown reasons. So, with reprints failing, new releases not possible, AMG did the best things that they could do with releasing scenarios and card packs to bring in some revenue. As hard as they tried, it all failed, as Modi is the first and final say and informed AMG to stop all development for Xwing, and AMG had to agree. They didn't have any say in this because Asmodee owns them as a company. So I'm now going to take a few minutes to discuss some of the rumors, misinformation on Xwing, how it was handled by FFG and also AMG, as well as corrections on the process for games as a whole. Okay? Number one. Why can't AMG just sell the license? AMG cannot just sell a license to another company when the IP is owned by another party. So to point out, when companies purchase or have license agreements, they are under strict guidelines and procedures. We also don't know the full or fine details of the contract between Asmodee and Disney. So when a gaming company creates a game for another company, ownership of the game mechanics, miniature molds, designs, blueprints, and so on are normally owned by the game company. So if Disney wanted another company to take over Xwing, they may not have the rights to the game or enough of the game to allow it to continue. So people claiming that AMG or Asmodee should just sell the license is not always an option. There are always contracts involved in these scenarios, and they are huge and very complicated. And these are just ideas or examples that I could use to where it's like, okay, Disney would like this company to start making Xwing. Unfortunately, AMG and Asmodee don't want to sell certain parts of the game or sell the rights to the game to another company at this time. They're just not interested. Or AMG and Asmodee may want to sell the game to another company, but Disney's like, nah, we're not interested right now in another gaming company picking up our game. So both parties technically have to agree when they make sales like this, and also everything needs to be sold in order for things to work like this, unless, there are lapses in how long you can hold on to things. But again, all that's in a contract that none of us have seen. And if you have seen it and you all of a sudden say, I've seen it, that's not true, well, you're breaking your NDA that you signed. So be very careful with that, because either you're lying or you are telling the truth, which can get you in trouble. And I already can feel the comments below. Tell me you've never done a gaming contract without telling me you haven't done a gaming contract. But that's the thing. It's all just conjecture, or someone who knows somebody who said something, who's cousins with a nephew, and they went to high school together. That's almost every rumor that I've always ever heard about the game dying, why they won't, why they can't, what's actually happening. The game's going to be dead in 6 months. And as they say, a broken clock is right at least twice a day. If everyone in the community is saying the game is going to die and then it doesn't happen in the time frames that they said it would, well, it's eventually going to die. And then it took 5 years from that initial time, which we all know actually was a lot longer than that, because I've been hearing this ever since I've been a content creator. Because I do get messages from people who say they at least work for AMG, they currently know someone who works at AMG, or they have some sort of meeting in a parking lot with a trench coat situation. I have no idea. But again, a lot of it was just random rumors, which I'm just going nuts here. But so that's just a brief explanation, which I can go into detail later, of why you may have not seen them sell the game or another company wanting the game, because it just might not be something that is possible. The second biggest rumor that I will just crush, smash, squish, and wipe away without even thinking twice. AMG and FFG and Asmodee didn't hate Xwing or want it to die. It is so easy to sit on the sidelines and in hindsight to show the poor choices that the companies have made. However, poor decisions is not proof that they wanted Xwing to fail. Any company with a strong IP such as Star Wars would want their game to succeed. The issue is always staffing, resources, and income. If none of these things are supported, then the game will eventually die or run into quality issues. Yes, the handling of X-Wing could have been better, but I see no evidence that they did anything intentionally bad so that they would no longer have to support the game. And I know you can leave all the angry comments below. You're not going to change my mind on that point. It's just not going to happen. You can't tell me that when they first got the game, they were so excited, but then, we don't know what roadblocks they were running into, such as multiple interviews to where they just said, we had lots of new ships in the making. However, a lot of them were not accepted by Disney. And then it's, well, we'd like to re-release ships. It's just not in the cards right now, because every time that they did re-release a ship, you could definitely see that the sales were poor because no one needed to buy another bomber or another TIE fighter or another ship that we already had an abundance of. And again, as I said earlier in the previous segment, that new players didn't know what to buy and old players didn't need any old ships, only that we wanted a re-released box so that we could use it in the standard edition. Another third thing that I'm going to discuss, which there are people that actually I know very personally and see on the regular that will highly disagree with this, but why didn't AMG just start making unpainted ships, disassembled ships, or make new molds? As I stated before, AMG and Asmodee have already started to see a decline in sales for re-released ships or even the new ships. To invest more money into too much of a risk, no matter how much money you think they have, to start making unpainted ships and make new designs or boxes that look poorly made or promoted, especially unassembled ships. New models require tens of thousands of dollars for each mold. I know you can argue, well, I know a guy that can make a mold for $2,500. That's great. Unfortunately, there are so many moving parts when you do try to change the game again that I can't say, oh, you would have totally made back your money in that transaction, which I don't think would have been true. It would be like starting a new game when you already have over 90 molds, because yes, that's how many molds we had for this game, because we had over 90 ships. And as much as we would love for the game to, come up with new things, we can't expect a company to go into debt to make players happy. And that's a really good moment to just say, it's so easy for someone to sit where they are and say they could just do this and make it better. But again, if all of a sudden the company AMG said, if we start not assembling the ships and not painting them, we would save so much money. We could then reduce the costs of things, and then we could start to make production happen, because a lot of things overseas were delayed because COVID hit. A lot of companies, like miniatures companies, were having to decide what actually got produced and what went on the chopping block because, hey, we need 10,000s of these ships printed and painted and assembled, and we need them by this date. Well, that company that you're making do this overseas is going to say, well, I can't make 10,000, plus you already have these two ships that are in, the runway here. We'll probably get those out in a few years, or you can decide which ones you would rather have, and then we'll try to reevaluate later on down the line which ones we can make next. And so you have to make these decisions rather quickly, and a lot of the times this is where you see, how come there's nothing new coming out of this game? How come my store doesn't have what it needs? And it's basically because either limited supply, or they would rather you purchase it from the website rather than going to a local store instead. And then to go back on the other point of, it's so simple, just stop reassembling and then also pre-painting the ships. So I have seen so many comments online to where someone said, if I have to assemble or paint my own ships, I'm just going to burn all my stuff or throw it away, or I'm done with the game. It's such a huge decision to make because you can see, to my left and right, we already have packaging for Xwing here. If all of a sudden you said, well, we can't have packaging with an open window and have unpainted, unassembled ships. So you're going to have to get new packaging, which then you have to go through your supply again and recall all the things that were in the boxes, or you're going to have stores do sales so that new content can come in. And again, you then have to hope that stores buy that new product, because it's a huge investment to say, hey, remember all that stock that you had on your store for first edition and you kind of had to get rid of it? And then we sent you more second edition stuff, but then players didn't know what they were doing or what to buy. We're going to have to do that all over again. And hopefully this time we'll get it right. And then we'll have to re-release ships that have already been re-released. And it's just not something that is going to be profitable in the long run. And it's just another risk that they aren't willing, and I wouldn't expect them to take. So to wrap this up, there are many choices that FFG, Asmodee, and AMD made that weren't for the benefit of Xwing. Luckily, we have the community, and it is already in full swing to take over Xwing and is no longer going to be supported by AMG. So currently, Worlds 2025 is going on at Adepticon, and this is the last fully run event by AMG. Now, after this, XWA is going to hopefully be helping the community along. I know people don't always agree with how they're going to run it, but we also have the Xwing Legacy crew. There are still people out there running first edition. And this isn't the first game that all of a sudden just, no longer supported by a parent company. So I am not scared at all. And I know there are already things that are in place to run tournaments. We've already got Nova that's been posted and is going to be fully XWA run. We have prize support, so you can actually purchase prize kits from XWA. We have the Infinite Arenas that's still up. We still have the Yasby. We still have Launch Bay next. We are fully capable of keeping this going for as long as we want. There are already points out by XWA, and we have list building apps. We can start using ships that were restricted before. We can play generic pilots once again. We can choose the systems we want to play. Local stores will still run events, and anyone can start a local group with the full support of the community. I understand that no one likes it when their game is no longer supported, but it will be carried by the community. Perhaps another company will reboot the game and allow old ships to be used, but that's also asking a lot. So the question is where is our channel going to go with this as well? We're going to keep making videos and support Xwing and HOTAC, so you don't have to worry about us going anywhere, even though Xwing is complete. And as we've said many other videos, if Xwing were to die, which, at this point, you can say it is officially ended by this weekend, we would still run content and play the game. So we hope that you're going to keep playing it too. Go to events, find the joy that you once had with Xwing, and if you please, say, oh, does anyone play in my local area? And say, well, my local group dried up. Keep organizing. The biggest thing you can do for your community is play. and help people find places to play. I used to be or was running my local group. Because of conflicts, I could no longer do it. So I've asked another person that's in our community to keep running it, and they are doing a good job of doing it. And I also have prize support, so I'm going to be giving stuff to our local community as well as other people online so that ships won't run out or new players can get back into the game. XWA is going to be creating as many new pilots, which they already have. They've put out some surprise pilots that they're going to be releasing so that we can use them in stores. I know there are tons of people who are 3D printing and designing new ships, and that might lead to new pilots or new ways to play the game and new scenarios, new rules. So you might even see some of the objectives change. You might see the point systems change in some way or fashion, but we are fully capable of keeping this thing going on our own. And maybe one day another company will come by and pick it up, but I wouldn't bet on that anytime soon. There haven't been any, rumblings of that happening. I know people were thinking that maybe WizKids or something like that, or Wizards of the Coast might pick this up, but as of right now, it is what it is. We're going to accept it, and hopefully you guys continue to play and support the game. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned a little bit something from this video. And, it doesn't always work out the way that you want it to, but we can make it what we need for the time being. And you don't have to, put your ships in storage or throw them away or, you know, give them away haphazardly and then one day regret it and say, God, I really wish I didn't give all that stuff away. And then come back and say, I really love to play again. But we're going to be here for you guys. Anything you need, if you want us to do a separate video on, any sort of rules or information, we're going to keep putting out videos like that as well. So that's going to do it for this video. Please leave a like and subscribe below. That way we know that our content is what you're looking for. And you can always support us in many other ways by checking out recontokens.com or just leaving a comment and letting us know how we're doing. So thank you for watching. Have a good one, and please keep flying out there.